Welcome to our viewers on PBS in America and also around the globe. The pilot was out of the cockpit, the instruments gave a false reading of the speed, and there was confusion among the crew. This is the damning finding of an investigation into the crash of an Air France jet that killed all 228 people on board 3 years ago. Families of those who died say the report is too soft on the airline industry. The BBC's Christian Fraser begins our coverage.
June 1st, 2009, and the first pictures of the floating debris from Air France 447. In a steep and rapid descent, the A330 crashed into the waters of the Atlantic, coming to rest 12,000 feet below the surface. The information for today's report was gleaned from the 2 black boxes recovered in one of the deepest, most expansive salvage operations ever mounted. A search that covered some 10,000 square kilometres and took 23 months to complete. Since the crash, Airbus and Air France have each tried to blame the other, but this final report points both to human error and the technical failures on the aircraft. This voice transcript of the final moments in the cockpit lays bare the confusion of the 2 co-pilots in charge.
What's this?
There's no good speed indication.
We've lost the speeds then? Look, pay attention to your speed. Pay attention to your speed.
Okay, I'm descending.
Stabilize.
Yep.
Descend. It says we're going up. It says we're going up, so descend.
Okay.
Descend.
Here we go. We're descending.
Gently, gently.
We're in a climb.
Damn it, where's the captain? Is he coming or not? Look, we still have the engines. What the hell is happening? I don't understand what's happening.
Damn it, I don't have control of the plane. I don't have control of the plane at all.
In fact, the instruments were sending false signals that the aircraft was descending. To compensate, the pilot in control began to climb, taking the plane out of its flight envelope while ignoring the stall warnings that were sounding.
When the airplane was in a deep stall situation, the vertical speed was very important. The angle of attack was between 35 and 45 degrees. And what we said this morning is that at this given time, only a very determined and very highly trained crew could have attempted some type of maneuver to try and recover the aircraft and go back into the flight envelope. At that time, it was already too late.
But for the first time, the report also blames the technical faults, notably the failure of the airspeed sensors, which had frozen, giving false readings to the cockpit. And shortly after this crash, Airbus replaced the sensors on all its aircraft with a newer model. Today, the investigators made 25 additional safety recommendations, including better training for pilots and better warning systems in the cockpit. The families group is divided on the content of the report. It is more impartial, say some, but they still complain that not enough emphasis is put on the technical failures. Nonetheless, it will have serious implications for both Air France and Airbus, who are now facing judicial inquiry for manslaughter. Christian Fraser, BBC News, Paris.
Well, for more on the findings of this investigation, I'm joined now by Peter Gols, who formerly served as Managing Director of the National Transportation Safety Board. Peter, is it possible that we can ever get to a situation where these crashes do not happen and cannot happen?
Well, air crashes are very rare to begin with. I mean, we've had an extraordinary run of safe flight. But a crash like this really raises serious questions that go beyond the normal accident investigation. You have a very complex aircraft. You have a well-trained flight crew, and all of a sudden they cannot diagnose what's going wrong. And the aircraft is sending them multiple signals. Its advanced flight control system is shutting down. What are they to do? And the cockpit voice recorder was quite damning, unfortunately. The flight crew never cooperated, never diagnosed.
Right, and the fact that the captain wasn't even in the cockpit at the time and they couldn't get hold of him, that in itself suggests that although Air France is saying the crew did everything they should have done, this is because of the failure of the instruments, there was a degree of human error, and it's humans that fly planes.
Exactly, and you know, the captain re-entered the flight compartment, but he really did not take control. I mean, when you read the transcript, you say, you know, who really was making the decisions? And no one was able to diagnose that one of the flight crew, that the flying pilot, had the nose in an extreme pitch-up position for the entire event, which was just fatal.
Okay, Peter, some people have suggested to me that there is a difference now, I'm getting way beyond my level of expertise here, between the figuration of a cockpit of an American jet, a Boeing, and of an Airbus, and that to do with the joysticks and the steering wheel mechanism, and that it's hard for the co-pilot in those European planes to know what's happening.
There is a difference. The Airbus introduced the idea of a joystick, and it's on either side of the pilot, and the Boeing aircraft all use the old wheel that you see in the movies. And for pilots, many of them swear that if you've got your hands on the wheel, you can feel the aircraft differently. Airbus will make the argument, and hundreds and thousands of pilots will confirm and say that the joystick gives you a sensitivity and gives you, a very professional read of what the aircraft is doing. But in this case, the pilot, the left-hand seat, apparently could not see that the co-pilot, the person sitting in the right seat, had that joystick jammed back. And there was no other, he did not pick up any indications that was happening. And the one time during the event that they pitched the nose down, the plane started to fly. But then they pulled it back up again.
Yeah, which is, of course, a great tragedy. But it seems from what you're suggesting, Peter, briefly, that you can fix every single thing, but it's very hard to think you're ever going to totally eliminate this kind of mistake.
You are not, and you've got, this is an accident that you really want to focus on cockpit management. How do you cooperate? How do you diagnose jointly, even when you're in unfamiliar territory? And how do you train your flight crews to better understand the capabilities and the limits of these fly-by-wire computers?
Okay, Peter Goldseth, thanks very much for coming in to explain all that to us. Well, human error, it seems, was also to blame for Japan's nuclear meltdown last year. A parliamentary panel said the Fukushima disaster could have been prevented. Although the problem was triggered by that huge earthquake and tsunami, it's collusion between the government, regulators and the plant operators which are being blamed for the worst nuclear accident in decades. The BBC's Humphrey Hawksley reports, and a warning, there's flash photography here.
March 11 last year, a tsunami crashed into Japan's eastern coastline. This was a natural disaster. But what followed, says a Japanese parliamentary report, was man-made. The water shut down power at the Fukushima nuclear plant and wrecked the backup generators. The result? Catastrophe. Explosion after explosion, high radiation levels causing mass evacuations and raising questions about the future of nuclear power. Now some answers in a report handed to the Speaker of the Japanese Parliament, and they're damning. It spoke of a multitude of errors after investigators interviewed more than 1,000 people.
The accident is not over. The recommendations should be implemented one after the other. This is the duty of every member of the legislature and every person of the nation.
There was collusion between the government and TEPCO, the plant's operators. The disaster could have been foreseen and prevented. They failed to adopt global standards, and there was unforgivable arrogance and ignorance. Swathes of land around the site remain contaminated. Tens of thousands have been forced to leave, while governments around the world are still deciding their own nuclear futures. The report says Japan had a right to be safe from nuclear accidents, and that right has been betrayed. Humphrey Hawksley, BBC News.
In London today, 6 terror suspects were rounded up in a series of raids across
that sets the rules for international football, approves the use of goal line technology.
An Argentine court has found 2 former dictators guilty of systematically stealing babies from political prisoners.
the day that the technology will be used. For reaction to this landmark decision, we can turn now to Grant Wall of Sports Illustrated, who's in our New York studio. Grant, thank you very much for joining us. Does this fix all of those awkward moments in big football matches?
Well, it can certainly fix the moments that have been missed in the World Cup and in the recent European Championship when the ball has crossed the line and a goal has not been awarded. And England has been involved in both those occasions, once to their detriment and once to a positive result for England.
Okay, so once we were on the receiving end and once we were on the losing end of one of those balls going across the line. We don't bear any grudges about this. But hold on a second. If you'd had a referee with his eyes open on the line, they would have seen in both of those occasions that the ball crossed the line.
Well, maybe not, because in the recent European Championship, there was a goal line referee who actually missed the call that was right in front of him. And so
well, maybe he had his eyes shut. He should have had them open.
Well, the idea is that goal line technology will prevent this from happening, and there are two different systems that have now been approved for use as early as December of this year at the Club World Cup. We could see this go into action.
Why did FIFA change its mind? They had been adamant that they weren't going to allow this technology, and now suddenly we have a reversal.
Well, it's very interesting that Sepp Blatter, the president of FIFA, was against technology like this completely for years until 2010, when Frank Lampard's shot in the World Cup against Germany went over the line and England was not awarded a goal. The World Cup is Sepp Blatter's signature event, and I think he was deeply embarrassed that this happened in his event, and so that changed his mind. He was a little bit late to the table, but his support certainly helped this go through.
But didn't he say